Friends, this is your host Sri Hari Atluri. We have an exciting program coming up today. But before that, I would like to thank you all for wonderful support and participation in last week's program, which we did a debate on the contemporary issues with the new and upcoming politicians. So thanks for all your support. And wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So we have an exciting program today. So that is going to be, we'll focus on Agri Crisis in India and most importantly, farmers' issues. So just last year, there were close to 16,000 farmers committed suicide in India, and that's more than 250,000 last 16 years. So we want to find out what are the reasons. Then we want to find out what needs to be done to prevent this going forward. Is there anything we can do? We can find that out. So all this we'll be asking questions to P Sainath, Sainath. He is the top journalist in India, and he has done a lot of ground level research, and he is acclaimed as the best person to talk about the farmers' issues by people like Amartya Sen. Stay tuned, my friends. We'll be going live with him in just a couple of minutes. Friends, we are back online. We have Sainath ji on the phone with us, and as I said, we will be talking about the Agri Crisis and farmers' issues in India. Mr. P Sainath is one of the first persons to raise the concerns for farmer suicides and unlisted deaths of thousands of Indian farmers in 90s. Since then, he has written hundreds of articles and field reports on Agri Crisis in India and various other rural issues. He is also the author of the popular book Everyone Loves a Good Drought. You can find that on Amazon. Then Mr. Sainath, I would like to thank you for sparing your time for us despite your busy schedules. Sainath, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you for sparing your time. I know you are very busy. We are on live with, we have hundreds of people who are logging in today. This is because there is a curiosity and there is a sense of urgency for everyone about the farmers' suicides and farmers' issues, what's going on in India. So most of our audience are living abroad, but we also have audience in India.
Please go ahead.
Sir, to begin with, we would like to know what are the various things you are working on currently with respect to the farmers' issues, agricultural issues.
Well, that's a very, very broad number of very, very broad area with a large number of issues. In the last month or so, we are also trying to connect the growing migrations, trans-country migrations within India to what is happening in the countryside, because no major institutional indicator exists which captures the kind of migrations that are now taking place. Neither the census nor the National Sample Survey capture short-term migration or what I call footloose migration. They only capture very, very limited fragments of information on migrants, whereas the new types of migration are growing massively. And that is also a reflection of the agrarian crisis, and there are some hints of it even in the 2011 census, but more data on that will only come out much later. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. In my year, I spend about 40 to 50 days as a migrant. I travel with migrant laborers, with migrant farmers. I look at where they're going, what they're trying to do, where they settle, which slums they end up in a town, or whether they get any other kind of work. That's one set of issues. The second is we have in the last month completed most of analysis of 16 years of data of the farm suicides. We now have 16 years of data for every state and union territory in the country. And this is very important data. It is official data, but the government of India is ignoring its own data and taking little bureaucratic faceless statements on farm suicides which are completely fraudulent and a tissue of lies. So that's the second thing we are showing. In fact, there have been only 5 states in the whole country where the farm suicides have actually declined. Everywhere else it's rising or holding on to a particular level. That's another thing I've been working on. And then the issues of the prices and the issues of prices of farm credit, of rural credit, of how banks are marginalizing farmers, and the kind of inequality growing in the country, for me, which is the number one issue, growth of inequality. Even your farm crisis is a manifestation and an outcome of that, a reflection of that.
Okay, thank you, sir. You mentioned about the suicides and the government not accepting their own reports. Are the suicides also includes non-agricultural related suicides, or if it is, how much percentage would you say?
That is not the way that suicides are counted. Suicides are counted by there is only one authentic body on suicides. It's called the National Crime Records Bureau. Asking some stupid, idiotic undersecretary in Andhra Pradesh to tell you how many suicides there are, does he count them? Does he visit farms? Does he visit people? Nonsense. He just puts an arbitrary figure which his government wants him to do. The real way of collecting suicide data happens. Every police station in the country, say every police, which district are you from?
East Godavari from Andhra Pradesh, sir.
Okay. So am I. My people are there from there originally, though I never lived there. But suppose what happens is, all the police thanas in East Godavari file their annual figures, not just suicides, murders, theft, burglaries, all crime and accidental deaths. They file these figures to what is known as the District Crime Records Bureau. Then all the districts in Andhra Pradesh similarly file their data which they have collected from every police station to what is known as the State Crime Records Bureau in Hyderabad. And likewise, all the states in the country file their data to what is known as the National Crime Records Bureau. So the National Crime Records Bureau is the only institution in the whole country that has data from every single police station. Now, to my mind, that makes it the only authentic source of data. I will not use the word accurate. There is a very big difference between authentic and accurate. It's not accurate because it excludes large groups of people like women farmers. On the other hand, it's authentic because it is the only official machinery in existence. You and I cannot count, we do not have the machinery that tens of thousands of police stations have, right? So that, it's like you and I cannot conduct a parallel census of India. In the same way, the National Crime Records Bureau, there is no option, there is no alternative to that data at the national level. Now, when you look at this data, it will be filed under, there will be many tables on accidental deaths and suicides. This data is not a secret. You can, and any of your listeners can access this data on the NCRB website. Please note, the NCRB is a part of government. It is a division of the Ministry of Home Affairs and comes directly under Mr. P. Chidambaram. So it is not about to be doing anti-government propaganda, right? So the NCRB just regulates and collates the data. Then, this data we now have for 16 years because they started keeping farmers' data from 95, though the NCRB has operated since the 70s. Now, in that table, there's a table called 2.11, which says it says self-employed stroke agriculture. That is the table relevant for your purpose.
I see.
Now, there are also tables for students. There are also tables for businessmen. There are tables which will include housewives. There are tables for different categories of people. In the first suicides, see, all suicides sometimes go up, sometimes go down. But nationally, the percentage of suicides rising, which includes farmers, is not much higher than the increase in population. Like say, in the last decade, population increased 18.5%. Suicides increased about 22%. In the case of farmers, the farmers' suicides have increased at a far greater rate than any other comparable body. And secondly, while national suicides have risen on a rising population, farmer suicides are rising on a declining farm population, which is a devastating situation. Farmers' population fell by 7.5 million between 1991 and 2001 census. The 2011 census, we still do not have the data. But if 7.5 million people left in 10 years, that means agriculture is bleeding at the rate of 2,000 departures a day on average. Now, nowhere, no government in the world has claimed that it has produced 7.5 million jobs of employment in the last 10 years. So the question is also what's happening to those who are moving out of agriculture in the exodus. Those are what we call possibly distressed migrations. But coming back to the suicides, we now have a body of data 16 years from 1995 to 2010. Of these 16 years, 2 years are rather incomplete, 1995-96 data, because it was a very new system. And a large number of states in the first 2 years did not file properly or did not file at all. For instance, Tamil Nadu filed 0 suicides in 95-96. Because they didn't, not because they were lying, but because they hadn't got their act together. From 97, we have clear data, but if we take the number of, even the truncated numbers from 1996, between 1995 and 2010, over 250,000 farmers have committed suicide. Now, when you're asking about could there have been non-agricultural reasons, that's the kind of stuff the government talks. But it is not my claim, nor is it anybody's claim, that every farmer who committed suicide, every single suicide is for the same reason. That's the claim. They are rebutting claims that no one has made. You see, when every suicide has multiple factors in it. Okay? But when 250,000 people from one community commit a suicide, you and I would be stupid idiots not to worry about why one particular community is doing it in what is actually the largest recorded wave of suicides in human history. I repeat, the largest recorded wave of suicides in human history. And it has happened in specific states, in specific regions, to specific categories of farmers, for us then to be saying, oh, this fellow didn't commit suicide for this reason, that fellow committed suicide because he was angry with his wife. That is a complete cowardly, degenerate evasion of the reality staring us in the face. Of course, there are other reasons. You know, there are idiots who come and tell me, one journalist told me a few years ago, that all these fellows are committing suicide, sir, because drunkards. You know something, Srihari? If everybody who's a drunkard commits suicide, there will be no journalists left in the world.
Yeah. Sir, there is a related question from Pradeep.
I can't hear you. Your voice is dissipating.
Sir, can you hear me now?
Hello. You know, you were much clearer a minute or 2 minutes ago.
I see. So, is it better now, sir?
Yeah, now it's better, yeah.
Sir, there is a related question from a listener from Andhra Pradesh. His name is Pradeep. So he's asking so many suicides in last 16 years. What has government done to prevent it, and why isn't the Swaminathan report taken seriously?
You know, that is exactly the question I posed to the Standing Committee on Agriculture when I appeared before them on November 3rd. And I was in fact informed that the report, because all of us participated in making inputs to the Swaminathan Committee report, which is actually the report of the National Commission on Farmers. There are 4 volumes with huge numbers of useful recommendations, a lot of analysis, and a lot of facts, contributed to not only by someone of the eminence of Dr. Swaminathan, but some of the finest minds on agrarian issues in India, people including Vijay Javandia from Maharashtra, including people like Jagdish Pradhan from Orissa. Some of the finest minds have put their efforts into the reports which were very, very ably mustered together by Dr. Swaminathan. The reports have been put in Parliament. They haven't been opened because our Agriculture Minister has zero interest in touching those reports. They did not say what he wanted them to say. They did not advise the lines of development or lines of policy that he wanted, and therefore they are languishing, gathering dust in Parliament. And in what have governments done? Some governments have done better than others, but most have done nothing. A few states have managed to bring down the suicide. Andhra Pradesh, I'm sorry to inform your listener, is not one of them. You know, if we take the 16 years of data, we have a method of looking at whether things are getting better or worse. There's a very simple way when you have 16 years of data. The data are from 1995 to 2010. Okay? So let us divide the data into 2 periods of equal number of years. 1995 to 2002, which is 8 years, and 2003 to 2010, which is the next 8 years or the last 8 years for which data are available. By looking at each state and the whole country in the second 8 years and comparing that with the 1995 to 2002, we can tell whether something has got worse or something has got better. Let me tell you the story of Andhra Pradesh. From 1995 to 2002, Andhra Pradesh had about 12,000 plus suicides amongst farmers. Okay? Now, again, please let's not get into this evasion of 10 people and that may have died for other reasons. Of course, everybody has multiple reasons. But the fact is 5 states account for 2/3 of the farmer suicides in the country, and Andhra is one of them. If we don't start taking those figures seriously, we are actually guilty of criminal neglect. Now, Andhra Pradesh lost 12,000 farmers to suicides 1995 to 2002. But in 2003 to 2010, the suicides of farmers in Andhra Pradesh was 18,000 plus, bringing the total to over 30,000. Now, clearly, the second 8 years have been much worse than the first 8 years. If you take the annual average of suicides, in 2003 to 2010, the annual yearly average of farm suicides is 100 higher than it was in 1995 to 2002. How the heck can we comfort ourselves with spurious, bogus, dishonest reasoning that it may have been for other reasons. Whatever the reason in the world, maybe someone killed himself because India lost a match in the World Cup. This sort of ridiculous, we can go on finding excuses for it. But if you want to be honest, and if you care about your people, if you care about your fellow citizens, if you give a damn for the Andhra farmer, please notice that the rate at which he has killed himself has gone up from 12,000 in 8 years to 18,000 in the next 8 years. So what did governments do? For 2 years in Andhra Pradesh, there was a little relief. Just 2 years. When Rajshekar Reddy's government came to power in mid-2004, YSR appointed an agrarian distress commission. It had some of the finest people that I know, and it made excellent recommendations. It was headed by Professor Jayati Ghosh, of economics professor from JNU. It had Dr. K. Nagaraj, then of the Madras Institute of Development Studies, again, to my mind, one of the finest economists in India, and very few people know more about wage labor, about rural distress than Nagaraj does. It also had a number of other excellent, I think it had D. Yugandhar, it had the greatest names in Andhra on it. They made a number of recommendations, studies, which I thought were really appropriate, really cut. But there were two problems. One, there were a number of policy issues which are not within the powers of the state government. Andhra Pradesh is not an island. Kerala is not an island. What the central government decides on a large number of issues will affect them very seriously, though agriculture is a state subject. But the second and great problem in Andhra, for the first 1.5 to 2 years, these recommendations are followed sincerely. For at least 1 year, they were followed sincerely. There was a lot of effort at rehabilitating and helping the farmers. And you will find in that period, briefly, the farm suicides fall. They fall by several hundred because people are beginning to get their confidence restored. However, from 2007 onward, those policies are abandoned, and in 2008 they are abandoned completely, and no more such kind of strong efforts to help them are undertaken. Things are paralyzed, and the suicides for the last 3 years have been mounting again in Andhra Pradesh. So these are the kind of problems that your listeners should be aware of, affecting Andhra Pradesh particularly. But barring a few states, most government, at least Andhra Pradesh did something for 2 years. Maharashtra did nothing.
Sir, one more question. Hello? From Ramu. So, Ramu is also from Ramanjanelu. He is actually a scientist.
I'm afraid your voice is fading. Can you please speak a little louder?
Okay, sir. Can you hear me now?
Not as clearly as I could a couple of minutes ago.
Okay, I will ask the question. If you need, I will repeat it again.
Yeah, tell me, yes.
Ramanjanelu from Hyderabad, he is asking what government needs to do.
Hello, I'm not able to hear you at all.
Is it better now, sir?
Hello?
Hello, Srikanth?
This is Sainath here. I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So, Ramanjanelu from Hyderabad, he is asking what government needs to do, and currently the entire support to farming is in the form of input support only, and is there a better way that to have an income security to farmers as a right, not as a dole?
Yeah, okay. Well, his question is a very, very large one. It's a huge thing. You see, there are short-term problems and issues. There are medium-term problems and issues and long-term problems and issues. The long-run problems of Indian agriculture will not be solved without resolving issues of ownership, absentee landlordism, land reform, land redistribution. Take, for instance, in Andhra Pradesh, a significant number of the farmers committed suicide were highly oppressed tenant farmers. They may not be the majority. They are a very vulnerable group. They may not, I'm saying they are not the majority of suicides, but a significant number of them have committed suicide. An absentee landlord leasing out land to an, say, in your district, in Godavari, East Godavari, or in Krishna district, you know, the rents are extortion level. Most of your produce, 80% of produce or more, may be taken by the absentee landlord. So there are long-term issues which have to be sorted out by tenancy reforms, land reform, land redistribution. There are also other issues. I believe that the entire problem of, in Andhra and Maharashtra, in the 5 states where the suicides are highest, there is also the problem of the model of agriculture we are pursuing. Andhra, Maharashtra, Punjab, these states are destroying their soil fertility. They are using models of agriculture which are extremely chemical intensive. Overuse, excessive use of a model of agriculture driven by chemical fertilizer, chemical pesticides, overuse of inputs, loss of soil fertility, poisoning of the water. All these are problems plaguing Andhra's agriculture as increasingly in many other parts of the country. But in the short term, and that has got to be resolved. You cannot continue with what I call agriculture on steroids. We are running our agriculture on steroids. So that's another set of issues we've got to address in the medium term very solidly. Immediately, there are a number of things that governments, both state and center, can do. Okay. Now, for instance, I made 3 demands when I appeared before the Standing Committee on Parliament. I noted that the Parliament of India has had one session which went entirely in discussing whether there should be a Lokpal or not. One session which entirely went in deciding who to favor in the fight between Anil Ambani and Mukesh Ambani, as if the KG gas is property of the Ambanis and not natural resources of the people of Andhra Pradesh. But one whole session in Parliament went in debating that. Another whole session of Parliament went in debating something else. In the 60 years of Parliament, can we have one day special session discussing the crisis in Indian agriculture, please? Can we have one session dedicated to the 60% of the population dependent on or related to the agrarian sector? That is the first. The second is immediately taking up the first set of recommendations of the National Commission on Farmers, on credit, on inputs, not just inputs, but they have also spoken about credits, market linkages, supports, revival of the agriculture universities. There are dozens and dozens of very valid recommendations. Now, I don't agree with all the recommendations, but I would say there are substantially useful ones. If the government could be made to start honoring the recommendation of its own National Commission of Farmers, that would start. I also think we need a white paper on the agrarian crisis and on the farmers' suicides. 4, we need a number, as I said, if it's National Commission of Farmers, you have a number of specific measures. But there are also other things that can be mandated. There are lots of other things that can be mandated in terms of making state governments. For instance, Kerala is going to get into extremely serious trouble, though it's been one of the most progressive and successful states in reducing farm suicides. Now again the farm suicides are going up as Government of India, regardless what it does to Kerala, is signing one free trade agreement after another. It signed the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, it signed the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, it is in negotiation with the European Union for a free trade agreement. This affects the cash crop state of Kerala extremely adversely. and all cash crop regions will be affected very adversely, including in Andhra, but more in Kerala than anywhere else. It is entirely a cash crop state. So there are things that are within the power of the government to address immediately, to say that we will not act against the wishes of the state, we will not act against the wishes of the people of a state, that we will hold these in abeyance for a discussion in Parliament. We will not implement policies that are favoring corporations. We will implement policies that favor our farmers. So yes, that's my answer.
Sir, Sandeep from Nalgonda, he is asking about the Right to Food Act, Food Security Act. So he's saying there has to be a balance between providing food security for the rest of the country and the benefits of the farmers. So is the Food Security Act going to kill the price for the farmers?
No. Actually, my friend I think is sincerely confused. You see, the first thing is to understand who the Indian farmer is. And don't make these two issues contingent on each other. And by the way, I oppose that bill in its current form. I think it actually lowers the constitutional obligations of the state of India. First of all, let me explain. 77%, I hope my friend from Hyderabad is listening, 77% of Indian farmers are net purchasers of food grain. Okay? Which means they are as badly affected by rising prices of food grain. Please don't believe this nonsense that Montek Singh Ahluwalia and Manmohan tell you that higher prices are benefiting the farmer. They are not. They are not going to the farmer. Please ask farmers whether they are being benefited by the higher prices. They are not. Result shows you that the Indian households have paid 6 lakh crores. You want the exact figure, it's 5.8 lakh crores due to inflation in 36 months, additional to their normal expenditure. 77% of Indian farm households fall into that category, which have been ripped open by the inflationary pressures. So first of all, please understand that farmers are also net purchasers of food grain on the market. It's not as if they produce everything and they eat everything that they need and then sell the rest. That is not what is happening. Second, the benefit of higher prices is going to them, and if we go through with the FDI in retail, the benefit of higher prices will go to the Walmarts and to the Craigs and the others like that. It will go to the farmer. So it is absolutely a canard that the higher prices of the last few years have been benefiting the farmer. That is simply not the case. Second, the farmer also is in need of food security, my friend. Please notice that if you look at the global hunger index, India ranks 67 out of 81. That means there are only 14 countries in the world that are worse than you. As per the global hunger index, which is an index put out by the International Food Policy Research Institute, this index based on national proportions of malnourishment, on child malnourishment and underweight children proportion, and on child mortality below the age of 5. Kindly note that almost the entire sub-Saharan Africa does better than us. So your food security issue is a huge crisis. But the bill is a fraud. And by the way, there is absolutely nothing that stops you from giving food security, from giving better prices to the farmer and looking after the food security of the Indians. Kindly ask my friend in Hyderabad to go to the Union Budget. It's online. Please go to a section called Statement Revenue Foregone. It is what has been written off in taxes for the corporate sector of India. Almost 5 lakh crores has been written off in direct income tax concessions for the richest Indians, for the richest 0.0001% of Indians. The 4,62,000 crores has been written off in direct income tax, in customs duties and in excise duties. Now, these are not subsidies. Subsidies are separate. Those are another few lakh crores. These are just the write-off. This is just the write-off of taxes, the Karza Mafi for richest elite. Please note 4,62,000 crores is 2.5 times your 2G scam. Except that this scam is legal because we are running a welfare nanny state for the corporate world. 4,62,000 crores is 2.5 times the highest estimate of the 2G loss. Out of that, 88,263 crores, what is written off in direct tax concessions, direct income tax write-off for the Adani's, Tatas, Birlas, the other corporations. Now, you know what it costs? Let me explain to my friend. Do you know what it costs to run a 100% public distribution system accessible to the entire nation without APL, BPL, or even your agriculture minister's IPL? It costs, the highest estimate for running a universal distribution system is 90,000 crores, which is exactly what you are writing off in direct taxes for 0.00001% of the population. You could use that money to provide the public distribution system that will provide universal food security while ensuring that farmers get the number of benefits and higher prices directly through other structured means by which can create such a situation rather than the way the government is going about it now. Right now, the government is robbing from the poor and the farmer to pay the rich. In the same budget where 88,000 crores is written off, richest people, two of whom are the richest 10 men in the world, in that same budget, 450 crores is cut from food security.
Sir,
Hello.
Sainath garu. Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Hello.
Sir, there is a question from Chennai.
Yeah.
So Ram Kumar from Chennai is asking, corporations like Walmart are known to influence both sides of retail chain by controlling buy and sell. So if the FDI, is it going to benefit the farmers or not? He is asking, sir.
Okay, Ram Kumar should just look at the United States, where the small farmer is almost extinct, and the small farmer is the most bankrupt person of the agrarian chain, where Walmart has been for 50 years. What has happened in the last 2-3 decades? The small farmer in America has been obliterated by corporate farming and the big chains, which are closely interlocked. Why should it be different here, where your farmers are much weaker? Now your farmers today are exploited by much smaller, linear, weaker intermediates. You're asking that they instead, we remove all these tiny intermediates, these little fellows, and place them with a giant elephant oppressor. If it was so beneficial, how come the farmers of United States are not lovers of Walmart? How come family farmers of United States today account for 1% of the population or less? How come they are going bankrupt at the rate of 700 a week when the Associated Press last wrote about that? Then I think that as the base of farmers came down, it came down to 400 a week bankruptcies in the farm belt. How come this never benefited them? This is utterly far-fetched dreaming. And, you and I, for us, it is daydreaming. But for the people making these moves, there are, Ramakumar and I can dream. But for the people making these moves, they know what they're doing. They're doing it with extreme cynicism. And I am absolutely convinced there are lots of personal under-the-table benefits, racketeering, and money-making that is going on in selling this country and its farmers down the river. Please explain to me why the farmers of the United States are amongst the worst, are in the worst shape, much worse shape than farmers in most other countries. They have dwindled to 2% of the population or less.
So talking about the United States, some of the scientists and NGOs are saying in India that Monsanto products have increased the cost of production by promoting hybrid seeds, fertilizers and pesticides. Could you please shed some light on that?
That is absolutely correct. That it's not just in India. I marvel at the fact that all this information is openly available in the public domain, but we refuse to take note of it. Please let me give you the example where Monsanto is involved in BT cotton. In 1990, I have been covering Vidarbha regularly since 2003, very regularly. I used to wear earlier also, but why is 2003, 2004 important? Because there was no BT cotton seed in Vidarbha in 2003. The trials had begun. In 2004, nationally, less than 10% of cotton area was under BT. Okay? Now, in 1991, when people were using native seed, there was no cost of seed because you generated your own seed. You picked out your seed from the cotton, from the floss. I hope you know that even in the American Midwest, there is a profession called seed cleaners. By the way, they have been raided by state police. In Iowa, they have been raided, I think, by even the FBI in some places, if I'm not mistaken. But police, I know for sure, has been used against them at the behest of the seed companies. Okay? Now, you as a farmer in, say, Adilabad, which is a cotton growing area in Andhra Pradesh, or in Yavatmal across the border in Maharashtra, you simply used your own seed in the 70s, 80s, and even up to a few of them early 90s. If you bought local seed in the market, which very few people did, it cost about 9 rupees kilogram. From the 1990s, the hybrids came in to a very big way in the 1890s in these areas. By the 1990s, hybrids had replaced the local varieties almost completely. Today, Yavatmal, Vashim, Buldana, Akola, Amravati, it is virtually impossible to generate or find significant quantity of native seed which are far more pest resistant, far more drought resistant, require virtually no irrigation. Now the hybrid seed came in. I'm not talking about Monsanto, I'm talking about other hybrid seeds, pre-BT. The packets would come in at 450 grams. If you bought local seed on market, it cost 9 rupees per kilogram. These seeds came in at 250 to 350 rupees for a packet of 450 grams. Srihar, do you know why in India are seeds sold in packets of 450 grams? Doesn't it seem curious to you? Why should they not be sold in 500 grams? 250 grams, 500, 750 grams or 1000 grams makes sense. Why is it sold in 450 grams? Because these are American companies and American standards and systems, and 450 grams makes 1 pound. They enter their books as 1 pound. So we are saddled with this peculiar grotesque figure of 450 grams rather than half a kilogram. Anyway, the hybrid seeds started coming at 350 rupees. Meant that 1 full kilogram cost 800 rupees or 900 rupees. 350 to 400 rupees for 450 grams. Then comes BT cotton. In 2005, we had the first BT cotton selling massively, bold one, and the cost goes up to what? Per bag of 450 grams. In Andhra Pradesh and in Maharashtra, 450 grams of BT cotton seed was selling between 1600 rupees and 1850 rupees. That here means that your Indian farmer was paying about 4,000 rupees per kilogram. You take 1,850 rupees for 450 grams. So 400 grams, you can say that is what? 1,950 or 2,000 rupees. For 1 kilogram, you're paying almost 4,000 rupees per kilogram of seed, which is higher probably, I don't know, but you can check it, than what American farmers in the Midwest were paying for that seed in that quantity. And anyway, you have gone from 9 rupees per kilogram to 800 rupees per kilogram to 3,800 to 4,000 rupees per kilogram. One thing I must say stands to the credit of the then agriculture minister of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Raghuvira Reddy. I must concede this. Unfortunately, today he is no longer agriculture, he is the revenue minister, I believe. He took Monsanto Mexico. Mexico is the front Indian company. He took them to court. He took them before monopolies, restrictive trade practices. Do you know what happened? So severe was the hearing. Before the first hearing, they dropped the price from 1,800. From 1,800, the price fell to 900 and then to 750. If they were still making money at 750, then please ask yourself, what was margin they were making when they're selling the same packet at 1,600 to 1,850? It means they were making a margin of 1,400 rupees or more per bag, killing your farmer with that cost. Now, they have withdrawn Bolgard 1. They themselves, Monsanto itself agrees that it has gained resistance to it. They have brought in Bolgard 2, which is now costing 950 rupees for 450 grams. So it means that you are paying more than 2,000 rupees per kilogram of that seed, when just a decade and a half ago you were paying, less than 800 rupees per kilogram, and 2 decades ago you were paying 9 rupees per kilogram of seed. So yes, those complaints are absolutely valid and correct.
Sir, but don't the farmers have an option? Can they grow their own seed?
No, they can't. They don't have option. You try finding the seed. These systems work on monopoly. They have, your entire last 20 years of policy have converted your agricultural universities and research institutes into house of foreign multinational companies and big Indian corporations. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the agricultural universities of Punjab, Maharashtra used to serve the farming community. Now, please go and see the other agricultural university. Go and see these universities. Sitting on syndicates are the big manufacturers of private seed. The fellow, you have put the fox to guard the chickens. The universities have become branch plant economies. The public sector seed producers have become branch plant economies of the global multinationals. So they are no longer working or serving your farmer. They are working and serving the interest of Monsanto. Monsanto, for instance, if you take the BT corn seed, in 2005, the government of Maharashtra's agriculture commissioner issued a warning to farmers. Please do not use BT in rain-fed areas. The results are negative. The same poor commissioner's government then became the distributor for Monsanto through Mahabij. That is the Maharashtra Seed Company, which is a government sector company, and became the major distributor for Monsanto, ignoring its own advice to farmers not to use that seed in rain-fed irrigated areas. Got it?
Yes, sir. Sir,
so they are not serving. They are not serving the farmer.
We have a caller. His name is Yashwant. Yashwant, can you ask your question? Tell us where you are from and ask your question.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning, Sainath Garu. My name is
Yashwant.
Good morning, Sainath Garu. My name is Yashwant. I'm calling from Edison, New Jersey. Basically, I belong to Andhra Pradesh. I'm very happy to talk to you in this morning, and thanks to Mr. Atluri also for having this giving me an opportunity. Sir, I have a few questions. Sir. The first
Please
question.
keep it precise. Please keep it short.
Just precise also.
Okay.
Sir, what is your opinion on GM crops for India? Does it really need, India really needs the GM crops in the food crops especially? That is one question.
Okay.
The second question, the Biotechnology Regulatory Authority, the regulatory body, it seems to be something funny. Because, you know, the 5 members of the body belongs to Department of Biotechnology. Actually, the biotechnology promotes the research and biotechnology research, but it's not going to be regulated. So I feel a little bit tricky on that.
Okay, let me answer your question. Let me answer your second question first, because, you know, if there are too many questions, I will lose the thread.
Okay.
The second question, firstly, the BRAI bill is coming up in Parliament. It was to come up last session. It was it was there. It did not get discussed because of the whole Lokpal business. Okay? Now, the Biotech Regulatory Authority bill, let me also point out to you that the day that bill was to come up in Parliament, that whole week, Monsanto ran a multi-crore advertising campaign exaggerating the effects of its BT cotton seed, saying so many farmers have saved 30,000 crores or some similar nonsense. And there was also the extensive use of paid news. Advertisements, what were really advertisements, were carried with the names of actual writers and photographers, so that readers would think those stories were real news stories. Okay? Now, the BRAI, let me point out to you that there is no regulatory framework worth 10 paisa in the country to monitor or look at, or let alone even regulate, to even look at what is going on in those fields. In fact, if you remember, BT cotton was established in India through field trials which were absolutely illegal. And then it became a fait accompli as it began to spread in Gujarat. It became a fait accompli, and the GAC and others took on sort of rationalize what had already happened, and that is how the BT, which is the closest thing to a genetically modified kind of thing that you have in India, started coming up. Please note that the center, that the Cotton Research Center in Nagpur tried to create an independent Indian BT based on a direct strain, not on hybrid, okay, not on hybrid, but on a direct strain which would have benefited the Indian farmer because it was a local variety based on what was it called? Narmada Behari. I think Narmada Behari. I think that was what it was called. They created this. It would have cost, by the way, 50 rupees a kilogram or 100 rupees a kilogram. First, the GAC sat on the approval of the Indian BT for 3 years or 2 years, and then when the CICR, the Center for Research in Cotton, Indian Center for Research Cotton in Nagpur, actually managed to come up with something. It was killed using threats of intellectual property rights violence that was aborted in the womb. That was what happened. So you don't have any regulatory framework. What you're doing is what you're seeing is a complete capture of even your regulatory framework will be written by the people who are going to benefit from the introduction of particular kinds of genetically modified foods in India. Coming to your first question, on the question of whether let me understand. Your first question was then whether the productivity and etc. justified the introduction of this crop. Am I right?
What is your opinion on GM crops introduction in the food crops especially?
Yes. I am okay. I am saying firstly, I am absolutely opposed to the introduction of GM crops in India at this stage, particularly under the frameworks of policies that now exist. Particularly, you not only simply be surrendering your food security, you will be surrendering your food sovereignty to 2 or 3 companies. This is, it's not even that you're going to be colonized by a nation. Your agriculture will be colonized by less than half a dozen companies. Is that something you want to do? In the real world, those are the corporations that control agriculture. And you are then inviting, we are then inviting them to come and colonize our agriculture. Please remember the 1960s. Please remember the crisis of the 1960s when a government of India resolved that we will never brought to our knees through food dependence, and that we will create our food sovereignty, and that we will be self-reliant in food production. And between the 1960s and 1980s, you actually achieved that with a lot of failures, with horrible cost, with many mistakes which we should not repeat, but you achieved it, and that is a fact. By the 1980s, you were a reliant nation on food grains. Now we reverse all those lessons and hand over the self-reliance that we created to a bunch of cutthroat, rapacious corporations. So therefore, I am suggesting that in doing so, in bringing in those crops into India at this stage, we are not merely destroying food security, we are surrendering food sovereignty. This is the position I took before the Agriculture Standing Committee as well.
Sir,
Secondly, let's ask you, which are the European countries which are bringing in GM in food crops? Which are the European countries? Why are they not doing it?
Sainath Garu, Yashwant dropped off. We have one question from Karthik. He is from Kharagpur. So he is asking about the. His name is Karthik from Kharagpur.
Okay, Karthik from Kharagpur.
He is asking about the new land acquisition law, whether that is better than the old one, and if it serves good.
Okay. There are some provisions in the new land acquisition bill which are better than the old bill. But there are a lot of other things that come up which can make, to say that it is better than the old bill is not saying much, because the old bill was hideous. This has many horrible provisions itself, and it creates a lot of problems. It does not address a lot of the issues. Now, for instance, many people think it's an improvement that it makes the acquisition of fertile multi-crop land much more difficult. I, as a person who covers poor people and poor farmers, I have a serious problem with this whole formulation as it stands. When you say we will make fertile and multi-crop land much more difficult to acquire, you are also saying that land that is single crop will be much more easy to acquire. Now the bulk of Indian farmers, the overwhelming number of farmers, and the overwhelming percentage of poor farmers are those who work on rain-fed single crop land. So we are actually making the acquisition of land from poorer farmers much easier. Then secondly, it says private sector acquisition, there will be these restraints. Public sector companies, for them to acquire the land, will be much easier under the current dispensation. Please note that the current phase for the last 15-20 years is that the public sector acquires something and then hands it over to the private sector virtually free. Why do you think Mr. Praful Patel acquired 111 aircraft for a increasingly bankrupt Air India? Because Mr. Patel hopes, knows and intends that Air India collapses, and then all those aircraft will be privatized and go to private airline, brand new aircraft, they will be sold for a song. I can show you sector after sector after sector in Indian industry, including in the telecom sector, where assets have been purchased at incredible public cost and then handed over as a gift to the private sector. Please consider the case of VSNL and Tata's. A company which had 3,600 crores cash reserves was handed over to the Tatas for 1,800 crores. then got a gift of 1,800 crores of cash reserves, plus one of the biggest companies in the sector, in the public domain in India. Likewise, the public sector will be then used as the Trojan horse to acquire land and then hand it over to the private sector. So there are a number of ways which this Land Acquisition Act is unsatisfactory, inadequate, poorly discussed, and very badly structured.
Okay, sir. I know we asked only 1 hour and we are at that time. But if you have 10 more minutes, I have just a couple of questions.
Okay, but 10 minutes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Arjun Wu he's from United States. He is asking, parties such as Lok Sabha are aggressively fighting for lifting export curbs on food grains. Is the liberalization of agriculture exports a key for farmers to get a good price? Are there any opportunities for NRIs to invest in farm technologies?
Firstly, the parties such as Lok Sabha are insignificant in the political spectrum of India. They don't mean anything in terms of the agricultural crisis. Their press releases and their discussions may be avidly read amongst NRIs. They do not count for anything in the Indian political spectrum, where most of the masses have never even heard of them. That is one. Second, their debate is not just about lifting export controls. I have been demanding, and others have been demanding, lifting of export control on cotton. But that is an issue-based, product-based, crop-based demand that you make. They are asking, as I understand, they are asking for a company. They are in fact championing, as to the extent that I understand, that I do not take a great deal of interest. As I said, I cover politics and I do not find them significantly important enough for me to spend a lot of time on their positions. But to the extent I understand from the platform once in the past with them, they are entirely supporters of the free market economic system, which in fact you are seeing the results and the wages and the damage from that across United States and Europe, where nation after nation is collapsing and going down the economic tube as a result of having followed such policies. So it's not just that we isolate the demand for export control, okay, for lifting export controls. There are times when such a demand is legitimate. There are times such a demand is not legitimate. It varies according to the crop. You cannot have a blanket one-size-fits-all policy. You have to have policy has to be made in the framework of the real world. What is affecting whom? And in fact, look at the hypocrisy of the ideology of the free market preached by the government of India. For years, the farmers of Vidarbha and cotton growers were told, globalization is the best thing for you. It will lead to greater export markets. It will lead to much more hard currency. You will be richer. So let us globalize, and neoliberal economic policies of the kind that Lok Sabha favors were imposed forcibly on these farmers. Second, as a matter of fact, what it led to was the dumping of American cotton in India on a gigantic scale without any import duties. The highest import duty at any point of time was 5% for any, and today you can import at zero duty also if you want the cotton. So American cotton, which is the most subsidized cotton in the world, second, cotton from the European Union, that is from Portugal and Spain, is only second. Highly subsidized cotton was brought into your country in millions of quintals, bankrupting your farmers in the name of open economy and free market. Then, after 15 years of this torture, this January, world prices went up significantly to 6,000 rupees a quintal, even to 7,500 rupees a quintal. For once, the Vidarbha farmer had a global price in his reach. And the Adilabad farmer as well, my dear. What did the government of India do? It promptly banned export of cotton to favor its real masters. And those were the textile lobby of Mumbai, who needed cheap cotton. It used to import subsidized American cotton for them when that was cheaper. It allowed zero duty import of that cotton. When world prices went up and Indian cotton farmers started trying to sell cotton per quintal at 6,000 rupees, then the government immediately banned the export of cotton and kept that ban. You know, they allowed only about 30% to be exported. They kept that ban in place until the local price collapsed to 3,000, 3,300. This is the hypocrisy. There is no such thing as a free market except in the deluded imagination of armchair ideologues. The United States has no free market, neither does Europe. It is a complete travesty when actually they put up huge walls of protectionism at any moment that their produce is threatened, but use gigantic subsidies to price to open your market. Now, if you want to play game theory in your term papers and tutorials and in your PhD thesis, that is one set of things you can do. You're welcome to do that. But please don't play with the lives of real people. Please don't play those games with the lives of real people. Make your demands on the basis of what it is that people actually need and what people actually experience. This is the actual experience of the Indian cotton farmer. So you make your demand for export control or import control. By the way, even under the WTO protocols, we were entitled to put up huge duties on the dumped cotton. We did not. We did not put 1 paisa duty on it. You see, the rich of the world are operating in concert. The corporations, their institutions, their banks. Look at Europe. 8 countries so far in last count have had their governments replaced not by elected prime ministers but by technocrats who are approved of by the bankers, the institutional, the investment banks, the IMF and the World Bank. This is how the world is actually being run, not by free market.
Okay, sir, last question.
What is your other question?
Is there any message that you would like to give to your listeners? Most of them are NRIs, but also we have in India.
My message is very simple, that if you want to transform your society, there is a wonderful starting point in your constitution. Okay, don't go for kind of, fraudulent ideology of free market and laissez-faire economy. In your constitution, which is in fact a chapter which I consider perhaps the most radical document in any existing constitution, and I am proud of that document. Some of the finest human beings in the world crafted your constitution, from Baba Sahib Ambedkar onwards. There is a chapter called Directive Principles of State Policy. Now, the minute you mention Directive Principles of State Policy, 5 lawyers will jump up and say, but Sainath ji, the principles of state policy are not judicially enforceable. They are not legally enforceable in a court of law. That is nonsense. The very sentence, they are reading half the sentence of the Directive Principles. It says, the Directive Principles say these principles are not perhaps legally enforceable. However, they are central to the governance of the Indian nation and must inform the making of policy by the state. In other words, for the last 20 years, governments of India have been seriously violating the Constitution by making a mockery of the Directive Principles. Let me also point out to you that the annals of Indian jurisprudence, some of the Directive Principles have since become fundamental rights. Like education, which was a directive principle, has become under right to education a fundamental right. When all these directive principles become fundamental rights, you will not recognize India of today. You will have a revolution on your hands. Look at your constitution. Look at what the people, look at what those who fought and sacrificed for your freedom struggle, those who gave their lives and spent 20, 30 years in prison, that you and I are free citizens of a free country. What did they think? What did they ask for their children, for their grandchildren? It's there in the Directive Principles of State Policy. Please go for Ambedkar and Gandhi and not for Milton Friedman and other clowns.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, sir. Your time is very valuable to us, and you have given a very great inputs, and we will look forward for next time when you have time or when there is an opportunity for us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Folks, we would like to thank Sainath Garu for his valuable time, and we also thank Save Farmers team who has brought this show to all of you. Then Save Farmers is a People for Lok Satta project. You can go to their website peopleforloksatta.org, or you can go to Facebook, facebook.com/Save Farmers or facebook.com/People for Lok Satta. Then we'll also have other program early next year. So that will be a follow-up to what we are doing today. Please watch out for NRISamay on facebook.com/NRISamay for upcoming events. So January 7th is the tentative date. We'll have a follow-up. We'll talk in detail about how you can participate in some of these solutions that Sainath has mentioned. So I hope you will come back again. And next week, next Saturday, we have a very exciting program. It is we are bringing the world champions of Kabaddi from Indian teams. Indian team, both men and women, won the world championship, and unfortunately they are not very much recognized. So we want to bring them, and we want to hear from their perspective on how it feels like winning a world championship. And as you know, the women's team had met with a deadly accident just before the semi-finals. So we want to find out how they came back and won the world championship from the deadly disaster. And tomorrow, my friends, please come back at the same time, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So one of the things that Sainath Garu mentioned was about the FDI. So we will talk in stretch with one of the Lok Satta party leaders, that is Katari Srinivasa Rao. So he'll be with us 8 a.m. Pacific time, that is 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 9:30 p.m. Indian time. So please come back tomorrow also. And I thank everybody. I thank Srikanth Kocharlakota for helping with bringing on Sainath today. Okay, if you are still there, you can listen and enjoy this song from Rang De Basanti.